Maloo Natarajan, Chairperson of Flow Mumbai. Welcome to our panelists, Manish Tiwary, Aarti Gupta, and our moderator, Utkarsh Thakur. A big hello to all of you who've joined us today. For those who are joining us for the first time, Flow is a key part of FICCI with pan-India presence in 17 cities, and we have over 8,000 members. Our members are women entrepreneurs, corporates, and professionals, and we have a huge repository of success stories to share, including our very own Senior Vice Chair, Lubena, who has a successful business in Palga. The main focus this year is around entrepreneurship leading to sustainable livelihood. We plan to host a series of webinars and workshops for startups, Pan-India Incubation Award, and also working with organizations such as HeyDD to help women become employable in the logistics space with training them to ride two-wheelers for the last mile delivery, which is very critical for the booming e-business world. Let's look at how consumer attitude and approach to shopping have transformed in India over the past few years. I was chatting with my 8-year-old niece this morning, and I asked her what she wanted for her birthday. Without a blink of an eye, she said she wanted New Balance 519 V1 running shoes. She knew the cost, she knew the discount, and she also told me that Amazon would deliver it faster than anybody else. If you think about it, shopping is a very different idea to today's generation, in total contrast to what my generation had in mind. If you look at it from a business point of view, while the wind of COVID-19 is blowing against many aspects of the carefully knitted human civilization, there are certain domains that have been blown ahead of their times, one of the domain being the e-commerce. Let us look at India's story in the e-commerce sector. According to the recent Morgan Stanley report, the e-commerce market is forecasted to expand at a CAGR of about 18.15% to reach a value of 10.5 lakh crores by 2024. Increased adoption of smartphones and access to the internet, along with streamlined logistics infrastructure and online payment channels such as UPI, are the key factors driving the growth of the sector in India. The Indian government is proactively embracing and leveraging e-commerce digital platform to transform and organize traditional offline markets through the Digital India initiative. E-commerce will also benefit micro, small, and medium enterprises by expanding their market reach by overcoming geographical restrictions and competing with larger players in the same market. There are still a lot of unanswered questions. Post-COVID, will customers go back to their old ways of garnering items, or will the comfort, ease, and the discounts rope them into staying within the world of e-commerce? How do startups get onto the bandwagon? And tips to sustain and grow, to name a few. We have with us subject matter experts in the space to share their thoughts, their journey, and address all your queries. I'm going to hand it over to Sangeeta Mal, who helped organize this session, to introduce the panel. Over to you, Sangeeta.
Thank you, Maloo. I'm so pleased about this session today because we have some very senior and experienced people talking to us about the topic of the moment, which is e-commerce. Today, let me introduce our two panelists first. Arti Gupta, who is the co-founder of tech startup StyleNook.in, is committed to the cause of transforming fashion from being unrealistic and unachievable to relevant and delightful. She's a computer science engineer and an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Arti's business philosophy flows strongly from being adaptive in a changing world, and that has never been truer. A fierce advocate of equality and balance, Arti feels that the COVID times have presented us with a tremendous opportunity to right a lot of wrongs in the universe. Sounds like a big thing, especially in the world of retail. Before StyleNook, Arti was CEO COO of hopscotch.in and has worked at several other prominent startups in her career. Welcome, Aarti, to this panel. Next, I'll come to Manish. Manish is VP Amazon India. Manish manages the consumer business for Amazon in India. He is passionate about changing the way India buys and sells and has been driving the online transformation in India over the last 3 years. He assumed this responsibility in 2016 post a long and fruitful stint with Unilever. Manish has close to 20 years of experience with Unilever in various sales, marketing, and general management roles.
Sangeeta, we lost you.
Manish was part of the Unilever India board with specific responsibility for sales for South Asia. His last role was as the managing director for Unilever Gulf, managing a cluster of 34 countries in North Africa and Middle East, operating from Dubai. Manish holds a management degree from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and a bachelor's degree in computer science from BITS. Our moderator today is Utkarsh Thakur. Utkarsh heads the e-commerce marketplace division of Titan. Utkarsh is a business professional with P&L responsibility and 19 years of diverse experience in communication planning, broadcast, and marketing of consumer durables, now pivoting to revenue and profit management in the e-commerce domain. Expertise in consumer understanding, brand management, product portfolio management, communication and media, strengthened by exposure to Asian markets. He is creative and eager learner with diverse experience across sectors, roles, and geographies, has the proven ability to conceptualize and build from scratch with many initiatives garnering industry recognition. So thank you all very much for being here, and I will hand over the platform to Utkarsh to take us forward on this. Thank you, Utkarsh. Over to you.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and thanks, Sangeeta, for that introduction. Without wasting any time, I think it's an interesting topic, and the more time we can get out of the panelists, listening to their views, it would kind of add value to all of us. So Aarti, first to you, tell us something about StyleNook. What was the inspiration? I mean, where did you kind of get the idea to do it? How is it doing? And how's been the journey so far?
Thank you, Utkarsh, and thanks everyone for having me here. I'll just dive right in. So what was the inspiration for starting StyleNook? I've been in the tech, startup space for a pretty decent chunk of my career. And one of the things that, happens in online retail is, and especially in India, is the profitability of the business model. I think we often in our ability to kind of get the products out to customers in tier 2, tier 3 cities, cheapest value, etc., we often lose the eye on profitability. So for me, before I started StyleNook, a lot of my experience got informed at what I saw at Hopscotch, and then it has further gotten validated at StyleNook. One of the things that we do as a young e-commerce startup, when you kind of launch and when you start growing, and you're always attracting a newer user profile, and invariably decision makers in the merchandising, the branding, we kind of try and understand what users are thinking based on some focus groups, based on who's tweeting and their browsing behavior. And that predictability works to a certain extent, but very often it starts failing. And then what that does is that puts, for example, at Hopscotch, I was running more or less a marketplace of a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of like really passionate kids brands. Some of them were very big, but a lot of them were very small, what we used to love to call as mompreneurs in our cadence. And the risk for them is very high to kind of scale, because there is of course demand for a very high level of inventory planning, and then that demand has not necessarily been mapped to the market, because we honestly don't know who wants what, and we're just making predictions based on past sell-throughs and even if you look at retail at a higher level, if you think that, you know, this whole way of, you know, shopping where you browse through millions of, you know, items and kind of figure out what you're going to buy, is that the sustainable way to, you know, build businesses? And the idea for StyleNook actually came from there, that okay, we live in an online world, our customers are online, they're online as they shop, they're online before they shop, and you actually have the ability to ask your customers who they are, what, you know, they're likely to want. And so StyleNook in that sense is a personalization platform in fashion. What we do is, and our women, our customers are women right now. Of course, we may extend into other categories down the road. We're still a very, very young startup. But for women, it's literally about understanding who you are. You fill out a profile, and based on who you are, there is a very strong machine recommendation, but there's also human, because we work in fashion. Pure machine recommendations don't, you know, really always pan out too well. So there is a human stylist, which again is made scalable because my stylist can work remotely, they can work from anywhere, and that allows me as a company to have a very wide, diverse, you know, range of qualified stylists to fulfill this demand. So we've been around for 3 years. It has been actually very exciting. It's a new concept, so you know, it does take we've in our, I think, first year and a half, we literally had to kind of, you know, work very hard on explaining the concept to our users. But once we found, I think the biggest value we found is that, you know, our customers are our biggest, you know, advocates, and the word of mouth, when you have happy customers, and for the customer it's really simple, right? I need clothes that I look good in, and I need clothes where I don't need to kind of, you know, worry about, will this look good on me, does it fit me right? One of the biggest challenges with online shopping is that's where it can kind of fail. So happy customers are fantastic advocates for StyleNook, and that's what we've been doing. We've been doing really well. Of course, COVID happened, and I think now we are kind of, you know, revisiting some of our thoughts. We definitely, I think it's even more exciting for me now, I'll be very honest.
I think nobody would not want happy customers, COVID or not COVID. So thanks a lot, Aarti, for that opening comment. Coming to you, Manish, I think there will be hardly anybody on this group online this evening who would not know Amazon, would not have kind of bought anything from Amazon. But, you know, I'll tell you the interest in Amazon that while I think Maloo and Sangeeta were asking for questions, and there are quite a few questions that have come, so I'll kind of interweave one of them straight away, which is to say that Amazon is so big globally, and you know, across the globe, so many categories, so many consumers, and I think the laser sharp focus on consumer and being consumer centric. What people wanted to know was that how is Amazon India different, and how is it alike with its global partner, and any market adaptations that you would have done for Amazon India that makes it such a force to reckon with in the Indian e-commerce space.
Thanks, Utkarsh, for that introduction on Amazon, and thanks for having me on the call. I think I just want to clarify something, that Amazon's a very small player globally and in India, and it's just 21 years old. I mean, the previous company I came was from Unilever, was a 175-year-old company. And as a retailer, it's still very small. I know sometimes you are the flavor of the month or the year, and that's what Amazon is right now. And we try and keep away from it because it defocuses you from what you need to do, which is serve your customers. So I just want to set the context. And we hate it when someone says you are very big, you are number one. We just don't like it. We just want our customers to say it through the shopping. Coming to what is, yeah, I think there are lots of differences for Amazon when it entered India. And also, I'll also be self-critical that we learned a lot of it in China, where we didn't do a good job, and we tried to implement a US Western Europe model. And now, if you look at India per se, we've never had the advantage of organized trade. Yeah, and that creates a whole lot of changes which you have to do in the marketplace. So let me just break it up into two parts. What was unique about what Amazon had to do in India from a consumer point of view, and then from a seller partner point of view? So the first thing which a lot of us don't realize is there's no concept of payment on delivery in e-commerce in anywhere in the world. And India only has probably 26 to 30 million people who use their cards actively. I mean, a lot of us have cards, but we probably keep it in us on the lockers. So here you were stepping into a country where you wanted 300 million shoppers, but only 10% of them had a payment instrument. And it's a very, very complex problem to solve. I mean, Aarti is the technology person. I'm more the consumer person, but she would appreciate how much of pipelining and plumbing has to be done. And today, close to 50% of our customers pay in cash. Uh, Second, India is the only, I mean, it's a small country compared to the US, but given our infrastructure, there's no concept of a national fulfillment. Everywhere in the world, we treat a country as one, or Europe, the entire Western Europe as one. But in India, you can't do it because you can't deliver goods with that speed. Again, a regional network for a supply chain person is a completely different ballgame from a national network. Third, um, the the um, the networks in India are very poor compared to some of the other countries. It's improving, by the way, but when we started 6 years back, the networks were very, very patchy. And for an e-commerce website, latency is super critical. So a lot of consumers don't realize it, but depending on the kind of network you are in, Amazon deploys a different app. So if you log in from a phone which is a 3G enabled phone, the app which you get is different from what you get if you have a 4G enabled. The app which you get in a different region could be different depending on the network connections. Now, this is a unique problem which Amazon never had. Now, fortunately, after India, they've learned it, and now we deploy it in countries like Egypt also. I think the other thing was the ecosystem. So by the time Amazon came to US, you had the Walmarts of the world doing business for 50 years. Our sellers were in a very different space. There's no concept of catalog in India. I mean, let me say it, I used to work in HUL, which is, I still think, one of the best companies in the country. But I didn't have to have a catalog because I would just tell the distributor, this is the price list, now order. Now, these are some of the things which are very unique to India. And the last thing is, we love images and voice. We don't love text in India. And therefore, I mean, the spin-off is Alexa speaks Hindi. And one of the reason Alexa speaks Hindi is because she's trained for shopping now on Hindi. Now, these are very odd challenges if you look at it. If you look at the seller ecosystem, like I said, one, it wasn't organized. And therefore, you literally have to help sellers on board. So today we have, I think, around 615,000 sellers. But we have a network of service partners, around 600 of them, which provides every service which you want, right from saying how to create a catalog, how to onboard, what logistic service to use, when will payment come, everything we actually provide in a systematic manner. Second, only in India, just to clarify, we have every format of fulfillment. It's not there in any country. So I can fulfill from your shop, I can fulfill for your warehouse, I can fulfill from an aggregator. And by the way, if you want to move your goods to my warehouse, I can fulfill from there also. So that's a very, very odd way. The third thing, which is very important, is data transparency is still not very high in this country because of the fragmented trade. So our selling partners need help in understanding where to place their stocks because they don't want their working capital locked. So we have a very powerful ML engine, machine learning engine, which every day tells all our selling partners that, look, Mr. A or Mrs. B, please place so many units of stock in the Calcutta warehouse. That's where the demand is coming from. We also give them price nudges saying, look, if you actually price your product this, we believe this much can be sold. These are, again, unique India capabilities. So both on the owner side, on the customer side, and on the selling partner side, I just shared with you a list of various things which are very unique for this country. And like I said, we continue to learn as I speak. So have we, I don't think we've even sort of got on a 1 out of a stack rank of 10, but we believe we are making progress.
Thanks, Manish. So what I hear you telling is that everything that could be complicated has been complicated beyond comprehension for, let's say, an outfit that comes from a very organized and sanitized environment. And coming to, you've kind of really captured, and that was my next question actually, that what are those unique challenges? And I think you put it very beautifully. Coming to you, Aarti, you are running a tech-enabled service thing in the fashion space. It's a beautiful intersection of so many uh, varieties. And what do you think have been your key challenges in terms of scaling up? While you spoke in brief about getting customers adopt this thing and buy into the concept, but what have been the main challenges for you?
So I think in general, ours is a very new model. So I think the consumer facing, challenges definitely have been there. In our case specifically, I think, so I'll actually take a step back and literally talk about a challenge that everybody in e-commerce faces. I think Manish, you absolutely nailed it. I mean, the whole concept of cataloging, it's non-existent. And so, we've all of us in e-commerce over the last few years have been kind of, training people on cataloging in some way or the other. Invariably in fashion and in a regular catalog business, at the end of the day though, the purchase decision is made on literally two factors. And I think Manish, you would have the numbers on this, but if you see enough of the trends in the industry, and it's made on two factors broadly. One is the image and the other is the price. And which is why you will find that in e-commerce, I mean, there is a lot of investment done in ensuring that the images are fantastic. The products are beautifully shot. Similarly, and so especially in women's fashion, this is where I think the cookie crumbles. Women are the models, and invariably you will find a lot of the models are European. They photograph well. The catalog looks very international. But they're 5'8", 5'9", 5'7". Our customers are 5'2", 5'3". So for her to actually visualize, something on a model and then make a purchase decision on the basis of that, and then therefore, because there can be confusion, the deal sweetener is the price. That okay, great, I'm getting a really good deal and a really good discount, which if I went shopping in the physical world, I may not get access to. That often is the prompt for making that purchase. And that invariably again is the biggest challenge in the e-commerce world, right? Because then what that results in is tremendous amounts of returns. It results in two things. I mean, one is returns, which of course the business has to bear, because clearly if products are not being kept and they're getting returned, the forward shipping, the return shipping, the cost of the transaction, all of that, plus all the time that the inventory gets locked up because it's just in transit somewhere, all of that is a burden on the business. The other thing that we saw, and so my target audience again, because we went with a very specific go-to-market strategy, we said we will our first customers will be working women in India, who therefore are decision makers, who have the spending power, who have credit cards. We do only online payments. And so from that point of view, one of the things that, we found is that for people to be able to actually understand their own sizing is the most complicated part. And then that actually goes back to how do you catalog it so that people can understand it. And so I think for us, I think one of the biggest challenges, but it is a challenge we took on. We wanted to take on that challenge, that how do you make fashion actually, relevant? Because how do you reduce the whole burden of returns? And most importantly, I think, which is what I was saying, because I cater to a slightly older audience. When I say slightly older, I mean our core segment is between 28 to 40ish. They very often are absolutely savvy online shoppers. They will go to Amazon and buy everything for the house. They are high LTV customers on Big Basket. They're not online savvy. They're very, very used to, they go to Hopscotch and buy everything for their kids, right? But for their own fashion, when they kind of, make that purchase and then the purchase doesn't work out too well, that burnt finger syndrome is very high. That, online, maybe it's just me, and invariably I'm picky, maybe it's just because of that. So very often we find that that is a challenge for a lot of women. For us, that has been actually our opportunity. So the big challenge for us is in the merchandising backend, making it actually so robust that based on the user's profile, we are able to, do a really good recommendation matching. And then of course there are aspect of, being able to gauge her taste and style, because in our case, it is almost like a blind shopping. We have a human stylist who recommends and so forth. Therefore, the stylist needs to understand well based on a profile. So our challenge, but also that has been, what has kept us excited and going, is how we've been able to figure out people's taste preferences based on their responses. Very often reading in between lines between, what they request. Some of our requests that we get from our clients are so interesting that sometimes they're very straightforward, that I'm looking for, casual summer wear, and fantastic. That kind of makes it easier. But sometimes it is like, okay, I have to meet my, boyfriend's parents this weekend, and I'm looking for something for that. Now that makes it, really interesting, and something that the stylist then brings in her own experience, her own understanding, and kind of, assists with that. But again, going back to the concept, I think making sure that the merchandising is relevant to users has been one of the biggest challenges. So for example, there are certain segments that are absolutely underserved in the country. Plus size is something that has been growing in the last few years, and it is better than what it has been before, but there's a huge, distance to go. One of the other things that we often see is natural fabrics, because we know these things because our customers tell us. It's as simple as that. We're not judging, we're not estimating, we're not, we literally have like hardcore, inputs from our users. So there are certain, like, fabric preferences, certain, cuts and fits which actually don't make sense for the Indian body shape. But very often, they get manufactured, and they get manufactured in bulk. And because they've now been manufactured, that push mechanism that, okay, let me kind of, now I have to sell them. So therefore the best discounts and the best offers come into play. So I think the merchandising aspect has been quite challenging. In this journey, one of the things we've been able to do, therefore, is also, a lot of our model in general is a very deep relationship model, whether it's with our customers or with our vendors and suppliers. So we've actually managed to get it to a point where now season on season, we are able to give inputs to our vendors to also plan their, designs and their inventory, because we literally can tell them that this is what is going to be, more appropriate for this market.
So great. I think you almost answered the question, because there was apart from playing Sherlock Holmes on decoding consumer preferences, there was a very pointed question for you, Aarti, saying, how do you gauge consumer demand? And, what are the sources, or at least probably once you started off, how did you kind of estimate that this is my pool of consumers and this is what these guys would want? So that was a question. You want to kind of add something to what you said?
No, I think we went with some hypotheses, and again, like, ours is a learning organization. So literally every customer kind of adds to the input of what we learn, and we learn a lot of it upfront. And then for every curation that we do for a customer, we, send a selection for a customer to choose from. We literally call it like a virtual trial room. Every time she also rejects something, we get that data, right? That information kind of loops back into the system. So that's how we are able to stay pretty honest with, what the demand is.
Okay. So great. So I think now one of the, how should I say, the lurking questions in the background saying, given the category or given the scale of business, I mean, where should, let's say, a budding entrepreneur who's thinking of including e-com in their arsenal, or e-com as the driving force for their business, put it? So should it be kind of be a website by itself, as what you are doing, Aarti, or should it be on, let's say, some like a huge marketplace like Amazon, or should it be on a curated marketplace which is in a fashion, let's say a fashion vertical like a Myntra, or should it be kind of, let's say, something on Craftsvilla? I mean, what are the decision factors that somebody should put? Manish, if you could get your thoughts on this, where does a person slot, and who does one approach in terms of taking the first step in putting their business online?
Yeah, I think I would take a step back, and also I think there has been a debate, and the debate is still open, between horizontal marketplaces and vertical marketplaces. And I don't think there is any conclusive end to it. because there are pros and cons of having presence on both. And if I was an entrepreneur, I would think about the pros and cons of having listing across. See, having your own website, it depends on what the entrepreneur is good at. So if I am awesome in, let me take an example of my neighbor in Delhi. She was actually having a business on artificial jewelry, and she was really good at it. She had a few craftsmen working across certain jewelry clusters like Rajasthan, and she was good at design and sourcing with reliability. And my advice to her was, why would you want to open your own website? Because your strength does not lie in opening a website. Your strength lies in sourcing. And therefore, you can decide, depending on your product mix and the consumer target you have, where to sell it. Because remember, because one of the things which we must be very focused on is, as a budding entrepreneur, never get distracted into doing things you're not good at, because that's where a lot of startups start stumbling. So because you want to do every aspect of it. And a website, I mean, I'm just quoting Amazon numbers because I don't know the numbers for others, immediately will give you access to every pin code in this country. Immediately, in 6 minutes, you can become a seller. We can do cataloging for you. We have our own studios to do imaging for you so that you don't have to hunt around for the right backgrounds. We will integrate your system into ours, so you can focus on what you're really good at. Yeah. So my personal advice is, a website is not complex, by the way. Yeah, and it's been proven by people. But I just think it distracts you at the wrong stage of your enterprise. If that's not what you want to create, if you're not wanting to create a marketplace. Now, some people are awesome at technology, and therefore their DNA is to create the best marketplace and then get suppliers to link on. The second thing is, like I said, it depends on the target group you want to address. There are very, very high affinity vertical websites. Yeah, and they will survive. Fashion is one such case. And we do own some of them, like Zappos and a lot of them in the US. They have their challenges because of cost of acquisition, cost of fulfillment, but then they have their positives because customers like them for a certain experience. So just the way you don't have to choose whether you want to shop at Nordstrom or Walmart, you can be available in both depending on what your target group is. I think the same exists. If you want to be a very high-end brand, then of course you don't want to sell in a mass marketplace. So that would be my advice. And sometimes entrepreneurs, when they start, and Aarti can probably be much better at sharing this, a lot of hypotheses change as you start doing your business. You learn more. So you might start from point A and land up in point B, which is perfectly okay. And therefore, anything which is not a one-way door, I always encourage people to test all of them. Yeah, and one-way door is basically, if you enter through the door, you can't come back. The cost of coming back is very high. For entrepreneurs, I would always say, list in multiple marketplaces, see what traction you get, and then take the decision. So that's a long answer to a short question.
No, but very sagely advised. And you know, there's a question which has come to me for you, and very, very pertinent. It's almost like a concern saying, and I'm quoting verbatim, does a marketplace allow the entrepreneur to build their brand?
That's a good question. Let's take the last 10 brands. I'm going to talk about CPG because that's my background, so I probably know more about it. And since we sell to 30 million products, I cannot claim to be a domain expert. So some of all the last 10 successful brands in India in the last, say, 4 to 5 years are all online brands. Let me start by naming, and some of you would know them. So Wow is a brand which focuses on a niche in shampoos and skincare. So today, if you wanted to buy a sulfur-free shampoo, which a lot of customers want, they entered into that space because the only other brand was L'Oreal, we used to import it from outside. It's a 300 crore plus company. Yeah. Now, traditionally, an entrepreneur might think, if I get onto Amazon, the L'Oreals and the Proctors, they walk away with it. The Amazon search does not reward size. It rewards customer search. It rewards customer ratings. So a brand like Mama Earth, which we started 3.8 years ago, it was a launchpad brand. I must share this with everyone on the call. We have a program called Launchpad. If you are an entrepreneur in India who has a good product idea, we will list your brand for free. We will give you $5,000 of credit to start the business on AWS, and we will provide all account management services for the 12 months, first 12 months free. Mama Earth now has backers like Sequoia, Helion Ventures, in a very, very sensitive category like baby care, where people felt you can never shake J&J. I can't get into numbers, but it's a very, very exciting story. So I believe it's a product which counts and the customer insight which counts. Size does not matter on the digital world. It matters in the offline world where distribution muscle, advertising monies can stop you from reaching out to consumers.
So great. I mean, everybody has got a toolkit from you, Manish, saying what they need to do and what it will kind of, where it will catapult them. But very quickly, Aarti, any thoughts on this piece?
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit. I think, there is no one straightforward answer. So I absolutely agree with Manish that, don't get trapped into a one-way, cul-de-sac. A big philosophy, I think, as a startup is test and learn. I mean, do very quick tests, figure out what the hypothesis you're testing for and learn from that. But the larger bit is also, I think, it depends, right? Again, if you are somebody who's really good at marketing, like Manish gave this fantastic example of a neighbor who was, great at sourcing, but she may not have been as great at running a website. But there's somebody, for example, who actually has the ability to, who's probably an influencer, who has the ability to get a lot of audience for which they don't need to market. And then the product is something that develops relationships with the customer, that the customer keeps coming again and again and again. Because one of the biggest burdens of running your own site is how do you get traffic to the site? The big advantage of going to a marketplace is the marketplace takes care of the traffic. They have done, the advertising, the building of the ecosystem, all of that, right? So the customers come for free, technically. I mean, you lose margin. And I think that is the mathematics that you need to do, that margin that you lose when you are operating within a marketplace and an ecosystem, is that higher or lower than the cost of acquisition were you to run this on your own?
So
And run this on your own at different stages. I mean, cost of acquisition is also not like a fixed cost, it changes with stage. Is your product, is your offering something which, is likely to, get used multiple times, which means you acquire a customer and then you know that, okay, those, they're probably going to come back 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times. A lot of the CPG products are like that, the habit forming. But if it is a one-time purchase, the cost of acquiring a customer is actually quite significant. Online marketing is not, I mean, on one hand, it's not rocket science. On the other hand, it is expensive unless and until you get to a point of, optimizing it really well. So if that is your core, DNA, then it still kind of makes sense for you to try that out. Otherwise, going to a marketplace does make sense. But really, it really comes down to who are you? Back in the day, I mean, I graduated many, many years ago, but one of my marketing professors, I mean, one of his standard questions used to be drilling down, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? And I think it's important for any business to keep answering that, who are you? What am I doing for my customer? Am I giving them, an experience? Am I giving them a product? Am I giving them something which is, a fantastic deal? Because that is what is going to inform. But what you don't need to forget, one thing that you need to remember is the cost of acquisition, the repeat factor. How often are your customers going to come and repeat on your site? Because each time you need to pull a user to your site by advertising, you are spending money. If you have the ability to get the users come back on their own, because either it's a subscription model or because it's a value that they see that they are naturally driven, or you have the ability to, fantastically, get free traffic. You have, the ability to then run that well. And again, you should be able to run that well. So leveraging ecosystems definitely makes sense, but you do lose control over your margin, your, also how you want to be perceived as a brand. Do you get to tell a story? Do you intend to tell a story? Therefore, it's important. And if that's not the case, then it's okay. If you're that yet another brand of, I don't know, silver jewelry, and actually, you know, I mean, there are tons of those who are also very differentiated, right? So is being differentiated core to you, or having you know, just good distribution because you have fantastic sourcing is core to you? So
Sure. So what I hear between Manish and Aarti, you guys, it's all about core competence, who you are, who you're serving, and the huge trade-offs that you need to make. And as Manish put it very well, that the cost of kind of exiting a gate and entering a new one is immense, and probably an entrepreneur in its early stage can kind of not afford it. So I think questions are flowing fast and thick here, and we'll probably just take some of them. Uh, Manish, very quickly, you can see probably on the screen also, saying profitability of e-commerce as a business with the predilection of Indian consumers for discounts and offers. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's a good one. I wish I had. I must explain the Amazon model to everyone. I'll take a minute because it's very critical to understand how Amazon operates. And like I said, it's a young company, but for whatever we do, we always measure downstream impact, not just the transaction. And intuitively, all of us think about it. That and what is downstream impact? That if Utkarsh has a good shopping experience on Amazon, we can measure what is the downstream impact in terms of turnover and profitability. We have the instrumentation to do it based on ML models. Yeah. And Amazon has always worked on that model. So if you take US, for example, at one point of time, it was seen as a .com, one of those companies which will fade away. Today, without getting into numbers, one can clearly say that retail is profitable. And by the way, not only profitable, it's probably one of the biggest advertising engines coming up in the US and catching up very, very quickly with the big boys in that space. So there is this myth that AWS earns and everyone else sort of uses it up. I must tell you, it's a large company. I mean, like I said, it's still young, but the business models are very, very sound. Yeah. So that's the first thing. Second, will e-commerce ever become profitable in India? Yes. If it didn't, why would they pay me? I mean, it's not a charity organization. So the model for Amazon is it believes in, there are two kinds of companies. One company becomes profitable and then takes out the money from the company and gives it to shareholders as dividends and returns. The other format is saying, Utkarsh, I don't have to give you your money back. Let it be with me and I will make sure it earns more than what you could earn outside. And Amazon is that kind of a company, which is like saying, let your money stay with me. I started up North America and West Europe. I have made it profitable. By the way, on the way, I also started up a cloud computing company, and that I have made it profitable. Now I'm investing in the emerging world, and I'll make it profitable shortly. And just to let you know, I've also got into content, and I'm putting billions of dollars into content because we believe that is what customer engagement is all about. So that's the business model. So the short answer is, will e-commerce ever be profitable? The answer is yes. We would not be in the country if it was not possible. I can talk about Amazon. I can't talk about others. I think there is a thread which is a little disturbing in this country when there is too much of investor money chasing less opportunities. People try to get top line at any cost. Yeah, and that is what is disturbing, because I do feel worried about some of the Indian entrepreneurs. COVID has become a wake up for some of them because suddenly the deep pockets are going away. And no one focused on unit economics till now. Yeah, so I think there is a mix. The big boys who know this business, know the modeling well. The PE money sometimes pushes entrepreneurs to expand without thinking of unit economics, and those are dangerous businesses.
So I think one takeout from your statement, what I get, Manish, is that the need for a sound business model is paramount. I mean, anything else can kind of come and go, but a sound business model will kind of attract investment and stay on course to give value to everybody associated with it. Aarti, a quick one for you, which is saying, and this might be a slightly conceptual one, which is saying, what is the approximate cost of acquiring a customer? But a more interesting one is that given the entire value focus of Indian customers, it's kind of antithetical to what customization is. And you offer customization and let's say a bespoke model. How do you balance the two?
So actually, very good that you brought that up. I don't offer customization. I offer relevance. Customization, so I'll just also define. Customization means literally based on your measurements. I run a tailoring, unit that I actually stitch to measure. Personalization is based on whatever has been stitched by different brands, designed by different, designers and companies. I'm able to fit the right outfit for you. One works as like literally kind of crafting for you, and the other is, so we are very good matchmakers. Our job is to be fantastic matchmakers. We are like the shadi.com of fashion shopping, just making sure that you keep getting the right profiles, the right relevant pieces. So I'm in the business of relevance. That was the first point. The second one you asked was about the discounts.
No, I said, what is the rough cost of, let's say, acquiring a customer?
Cost of acquisition. Yes, I saw that cost had popped up. So I'm a marketer, and I'm loath to respond to that question because there are so many factors. Because it's not just like, a number that you can take and say, okay, this is what it is. So depends on where you're getting your traffic from. How much are you paying for that traffic? It would potentially be cost per click traffic. What percentage of your site traffic is paid traffic, what percentage is organic, because you're hoping that there are some organic channels that are also running for you, whether it is your search engine optimization, whether it's referral, whether it's any PR, there are other channels as well, right? So net a cost of acquisition is measured as whatever you spend money on marketing, that divided by the number of customers acquired. Now, there is no one way to kind of cut this, and depending on category, depending on user. So again, comes back to the question, who are you, right? Who is your target audience? Be very, very cognizant of that. Is it male? Is it female? What age group? Which geography? What category are you operating in? It is very difficult. So COAs can go from 200 to 5,000 even, I mean, of course, the 5,000 ones give me a little bit of a heart attack because those are immediately in a non-sustainable kind of a zone. But it really depends. Again, it also depends on, for example, if you have a business where, say your cost of acquisition is slightly higher. Let's imagine you're running a relatively premium business and your cost of acquisition is 1,000 rupees, which is higher, if you just kind of compare it, benchmark it against the market. But you have a product which has a higher AOV, average order value. So it comes down to your unit economics. If you're selling a 300 rupee item and your cost of acquisition is 200 rupees, then where that goes. Versus even if your product is 1,000 rupees, but your cost of acquisition is 1,000 rupees, but you're selling to that customer, say maybe 5,000 rupees worth, then you know that it is actually lower. And more importantly, if you're able to get that customer to come several times a year, maybe even at least 2-3 times a year, you recover because you're able to kind of amortize your marketing costs on that. So sure. I know it's a question that I get asked very often, and I give this very, very roundabout answer because there is really no one key answer to this. Cost of acquisition is a fairly complex mathematics. It's also a moving target. It keeps changing. So it's not something you can just kind of assume and literally, if any marketer will sit and look through this data month on month, week on week, literally daily as well.
Yeah. Another interesting one, and either of you can kind of go for it, which is seeing the Indian consumer is smartphone literate, but English illiterate. I think, so how do you kind of grow in this reality here? How do you, I mean, yes, there is an answer there, but clearly this is a big one. Saying the English being the lingua franca of a lot of e-commerce, at least in the niche space. But now you see languages coming up, etc. So what's a quick take on this?
Is that for me?
I mean, you can
I
go
can
for
go
it.
first, and I think Manish will
Yeah.
definitely have, like, a very richer answer to that as well, given the overall TG of Amazon. But I'll go first. Uh, so, I take it actually a step further, because it's not just the language, it's also, I mean, people's tendencies have changed. Reading in general has just dropped. Even people who are well educated, can speak English, can read English, have come through the fantastic, institutes. If you see, like, generation by generation, just that ability to read, communicate in the written mode is just really shrinking. I mean, the business school that I went to is IIM Ahmedabad, and it follows a case study method, which means there is not that much instruction in class. Our professors were required to do facilitation, and every student is expected to read the case and do their own analysis, come to class, present, and have a discussion, and the professor's job is to facilitate that, which means for every class we had a lot of homework to do before. I was visiting campus a couple of years ago, and one of my professors, and he said that, listen, you're in the tech space, and see, one of the biggest challenges we are having is our students are not able to read through the case material. Do you think there is an ability to kind of convert this into some kind of an audio visual content? So, and this I'm talking about your toppers from various colleges in the country, even from outside for that matter. So it's not so much about, like, just the niche, or, like, the general mass audience. I think overall people have started to read less and less. And even at StyleNook, I mean, one of the core reasons for me to go to working women as a target audience is because I knew that, okay, this is an audience which who are able to kind of respond well, very articulate, and that kind of helps to seed the engine, because knowing fully well that as you scale, you're not going to get this level of articulation. So we at this point are already at a stage where we are probably thinking that the site and the responses which are in a written format may not even make sense. It may come down to a voice bot or a chat bot. So I think that's a long answer to the short question. I think Manish may have a lot of insight on this front as well.
Yeah, Manish.
I think our problem is not problem. Our challenge is what Arti said. People, even if you can read, don't want to read, and that's how we shop. I think we tackle it on three fronts. One is our if you shop in Amazon and if you type things on the top, we call it the search bar. It is trained to understand Hindi words. So a lot of people write Hindi words in English.
Okay.
So if you see the number of spellings we get for something like bangles, people will write churi, but they will write it in English. But our algorithms are trained to pick that up, and it does it over time because you need to keep on learning.
ML, yes.
So the second is you can use voice for shopping. So next to the search bar, you can click and Alexa now understands Hindi, and very soon we will have 4 more languages. And the third thing which we are doing is, as we get to the next 100 million consumers, we are trying to make our detail page, where you get details about the product, less text heavy. We've already started putting icons instead of text, but we still have a long way to go. So those are some of the things which we are doing as we reach out to the next level of consumers.
Sure. Manish and Aarti, very quickly, I think unless Maloo and Sangeeta give us some leads of time, I quickly kind of squeeze in again one of the pressing things. How's COVID impacted consumer behavior, and does e-commerce as a result seem the only solution, if not the only solution, at least the most viable and sustainable solution going forward? Manish, you want to go first?
Sure. I think I said this to somebody else. For some reason, yeah, and again, not by intent, I think Amazon was created for this era. So if you look at the businesses we do, they're all digital. Be it shopping, be it AWS. So a lot of these calls which we are doing are hosted in the cloud. Be it reading, which is digital Kindle. Be it entertainment, which is OTT. Be it music. So in some ways, it was probably built for an era where people don't need to interact physically. And we are actually saying that maybe 2030 has happened a decade earlier. Yeah? Because we believe that unlike India, for example, where a lot of our services were shut down because of government regulation till May 18th, minus grocery. In other locales, they've been open. And in other locales, like if you take a NA, all stores have been open, minus a few clusters like New York, but the Walmarts and the Costco's and the Best Buys were open. And based a little bit on that data and based a little bit on India after May 18th, we do believe that habits are changing. And I mean, there are so many of us on the call, and just imagine, would you be comfortable for the next 6 months going to a theater and sitting next to someone with that proximity? I mean, it's just created a new paradigm. And I think people will move online. We're seeing that trend. I also want to clarify that in India, offline will never get replaced, because our offline is the neighborhood store where you know the person who can deliver it to you in 1 hour, if not shorter. And I think it's about coexistence. And as a marketplace, our intent is to onboard the retailers online so that they can get the benefit of their consumers not having to go out. They can get the benefit of realizing better value, and they can get the benefit of digital payment. So that's how we look at it. Will there be any dramatic shift? I think despite all the pink newspapers spending so much of time and real estate on e-commerce, my guess would be e-commerce would be less than 1% of this country trade. And therefore, at a 1% player trying to tell a 99% player that we wish something would change, I don't think anything would change significantly.
So I'll just kind of add to it where, Manish, even before this conversation happened, there were certain questions that were posted. And one of them I think was very pertinent, very pointed, saying, post-COVID, what are the challenges in supply chain or logistics that you see would happen to a marketplace, or let's say in e-commerce?
I think, again, everything is relative. Yeah. So if you see what's happening right now, the fragmented distribution chains are having more problems because there are multiple stakeholders. So you have a factory and you have a CNFA, you have a wholesaler, you have a distributor, you have a retailer. In e-commerce, if you look at, say, the top 200 vendor sellers, they literally supply to us directly from the factory. And you can supply to any of the 40 locations where we have warehouses. So if Calcutta is under containment, you still have a Guwahati, you still have a Bihar, you have a Jharkhand. So COVID in some ways has rewarded a large flexible supply chain system at the retailer end. And therefore the retailer and the manufacturer sync is much, much easier. Second, I think wherever things are controllable. So for example, if you even today, if you look at what's happening, for all the right reasons, some city goes into shutdown. Yeah. So currently Bangalore every Sunday goes into shutdown. Till 16th, I think Chennai is under. You need heavy doses of technology to be able to control this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we literally have pin code wise what to sell to customers, not sell to customers. If you placed an order, we'll refund your money proactively. At a local level, for a large distribution, say like my previous organization, HUL, it's impossible without technology to control. So I think those are the two short-term, I think, places where e-commerce is probably much better.
Okay. Aarti, very quickly, how's COVID changed life for the e-commerce entrepreneur, and any specific impacts on the supply chain or the logistics piece?
So I think the supply chain for us has been, of course, there was this whole pause till I think April 20th, after which, there were certain areas that became more relaxed. Again, for us, StyleNook as well, our vendors are all over. So I've actually had the ability to kind of, get supply from across different locations. I think the bigger question is down the road, how is this going to play out, right? Because right now people are still flush with inventory. Inventory which just got locked up because, sales had gotten locked down. And I think our factories able to kind of function are, newer supplies that are going to become available. And I think one of the larger pieces is, which in the case of StyleNook actually is, it's a challenge, but it's also an advantage, is in the retail space now, offline retail, just that whole, I think you'd asked that question about touching, feeling, all of that, right?
Yeah.
And that piece goes away. And I think in fashion, that has been quite important. It has been quite critical. Even in the StyleNook business model, we wove that into the business model, because that you touch, feel, try, and then you decide what you want to purchase. We've actually had to kind of modify that a little bit, because one of the things we do is now, before we ship out, we actually show a preview. But the thing is, the products are actually still matched to who you are. So the relevance piece is still very strong. It's very unlikely that you'll therefore, as a result of this, get something which is just absolutely not going to, work well for you. But we do that. I think the larger piece on the supply chain ultimately, I think, is going to be about, we've become a very globalized economy. Things come from here, there, you wear a piece of clothing that has come from, well, it was originally manufactured in China, but then came from the US, and then you wear sunglasses which came from somewhere, we wear shoes that came from somewhere, and we become very, very globalized in that sense. I think the COVID is definitely trying to kind of localize a lot of our, supply chains in that sense.
So very quickly, while we got the 1% and 99% answer from Manish, if you had to do crystal ball gazing, where do you see e-commerce? Is it a blend? Is it only e-commerce? Is it only physical in India?
Are you asking me?
Manish, I think we got a sense from you, but yeah, please, I mean, you could formalize your thoughts again. I mean,
No, please, Arti, go ahead.
Sorry.
Arti, the question was crystal ball gazing. What's the, as e-commerce grows, will the Indian market lean heavily towards e-commerce? Will it be a phygital world? Offline is so strong. Manish spoke about the 1% player trying to kind of, standing against the 99% of offline. So what's your take on the near future?
So see, near future in general, I mean, we will be moving, towards online, as, I mean, this is now like a decades long view, right? I'm taking a long view on this one. COVID definitely helped short circuit that. So a lot of people who traditionally would not have looked at online are now doing it, right? I personally have taught so many people how to make payments through Google Pay, or like, how to set up some app on their phone so that they can get the supplies. But that, I think COVID has definitely short circuited that quite a bit. So I think what Manish said really, spoke to me, that this became like 2030, what we would have kind of wanted to go there. I think in the long run, I mean, we are getting more digital. The world is getting more digital. So I think it may be a 1% play right now, but it is in that sense a fairly fast forward mode. And it may not be always just pure, like, all purchases online, but, maybe your relationships go online. In fact, we've seen that a lot in retail also, right? That the final fulfillment may actually happen either by getting it to the doorstep or you going into the store, but the relationship, the inquiry, that process starts online. So, and that actually has now started percolating to even like, the people who you wouldn't expect to kind of use the platforms. So I think that's going to happen. I think the big one, the whole GeoMart story, we am quite keen to sit and watch how it plays out. But that actually can also, make a big change in the ecosystem. So crystal gazing, I don't know, as a, entrepreneur, I get very nervous about just, I mean, of course I have to have dreams and I have to like, watch out for the blue skies. But at the same time, to just kind of, throw a crystal that will India become fully digitized, I don't think so. But will it get there? Yes, 100%.
So great. So essentially, there are n number of ways to get from point A to point B. So great. Maloo, I think this is an hour that kind of really flew by. I don't think we have the width of time anymore. So should we kind of call it a evening? And
yes. One last question for Aarti. We have a lot of entrepreneurs out here. One piece of advice from you.
Oh, wow. Stay the course and test and learn. Just keep experimenting. And I think keep experimenting and keep learning from them. So literally, I'll say this to everybody that, literally write down what hypothesis you're testing for, but write it down. Don't keep things in your head and test it. Put your data against it, map out, I tried this, it didn't work out. What did it not work out for? It could have been at that point in time, the momentum, the marketing, it could be multiple factors. Do that, try, experiment, try new ones, and then you will figure out like what works, right? And that's when it's the time to kind of go deep, but stay the course, because these are thoda challenging times. We are actually going to get tested quite a bit. And so giving up easily, shouldn't be an answer.
Thanks. I'm going to pass it on to Lubena, our Senior Vice Chair. I think she has a question to ask, and then she's going to wrap it up. Over to you, Lubena.
Thanks, Maloo. Hello, everyone. I'm Lubaina. I have two questions, Maloo. Am I allowed to ask both questions? Okay, so I have questions for Manish. Manish, there is something called the Amazon Saheli program. It's a program to enable women to become successful sellers on Amazon. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. So we have a few programs. In fact, 3 of them: Launchpad, Saheli, and Karigar. And all 3 of them are focused on slightly different sets of people. But what all 3 programs do is basically, based on your expertise and the kind of product you have, we take it online. All costs are on us, minus the production, but we waive off fees, and we give account management services. And if it works in India, which is Amazon.in, we then take it to the other 28 countries which we operate in. And the entrepreneur has to do nothing, not worry about foreign exchange, logistics, etc. Everything we take care of. Now, the place where this is focused on is, Launchpad is focused on when the thought behind is technology. When you use a piece of technology to come up with a product which is very differentiated. So I gave an example of Mamaearth. It was basically toxin-free product for your kids. Saheli is usually a group of women entrepreneurs who got together at a small scale. So for example, we have Kota weavers from Rajasthan who had good products, but they were losing all their monies to the middlemen women. And we have enabled them now to sell directly onto us. And they also sell on Amazon.com in the US. So suddenly, I mean, they have a marketplace which is like 50, 60 times bigger than ours. And Karigar is focused specifically only on people who do handicraft work. So the Moradabad carpet sellers. So I would encourage you, and I would have used that as my sales pitch, because at heart I am a salesman, anyone in this group, and I would please encourage you using your forum. And that was my key reason when I said yes to Sangeeta and Maloo. We would love to play a role in enabling women entrepreneurs in any part of the value system, value chain, whether it is on new technology products, innovative products, customer insight, handicrafts, weaving. We have very, very clean programs, and at max, it will take you a day to start your business online. Yeah. So I would love it. I mean, my email is there with Maloo and Sangeeta. I would love it if we could play a role in helping you. So it's a concierge service for high quality product manufacturers end to end for the first 18 months till you actually find your feet and can do it yourself.
That's really, really the need of the hour, Manish. I know how long it took me to onboard my business and get onto different marketplaces. So this would be fabulous for at least our members. I have a second question, and I'm going to put that in. Recently, in all my Amazon packages, we get Amazon story boxes, and it's another transformation in the way India sells. I mean, it's wonderful to be able to take a deeper look at the stories behind the products. I love it. I mean, I want to know how it came about, and is it India-centric? Would you be able to tell us a little more?
Yeah, this is an idea which is India-centric. By the way, just to clarify, because we ship millions of packets every day without getting into numbers. So when you print even one extra barcode on a packet, it costs you a lot of money, because multiply to 3 paisa per bucket per box into a few million a day. But I think we wanted to tell sellers, because we don't have a means to reach all sellers in the country. There is no television channel which is focused only on sellers. There is no business newspaper. And unfortunately, unlike other countries, we don't have fairs. So in most of the locales, sellers come to a fair. It could be focused on a category. Here we don't have anything. But what we do have is the millions of packages which consumers are buying. And I'm hoping a lot of you, despite being entrepreneurs, are also consumers who buy from Amazon. And you see that story. And we are hoping people get inspired to say, why would I not enable my business digitally? And that's the thought behind the seller stories.
Yeah. Thank you, Manish. I'll now move to the official vote of thanks. I would like to start by saying that this session has been a wonderful experience, personally for me. I've loved every minute. We've understood the importance of working with your strengths, importance of collaboration, importance of cataloging, terms like voice to shop, ML engine, etc. I can see from the comments that our members have enjoyed this as well. Thank you, Manish and Aarti, from all of us at Flow Mumbai for this interesting and relevant conversation on e-retail. Utkarsh, thank you so much for holding this whole event together. A special thank you to Sangeeta once again for planning the session. Wishing you all a wonderful and safe week ahead. We hope to connect with you soon. Yes. Manish, especially on the women entrepreneurs bit.
Yes, Manish, you're going to get a lot of calls from us for sure.
That's what we live for. I said we want to change the way people buy and sell.
Very strategically, we planted the Saheli question because I was very interested to know how we can take advantage of this whole meeting.
Would love to.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye. Have a lovely week ahead.
Bye.